here with Fanatik Bikeco's lead presenter, Rich. How do you feel about riding an e-bike today?
You know, Donnie, this day was gonna come, and it's here.
And I'm happy I get to share it with him.
It's a special
So stay tuned for Rich's first e-bike ride ever, with his dog not involved.
All right, we are in beautiful Cumberland, British Columbia, visiting our friends at Forbidden Bikes, and we are going to talk to them about an exciting new bike, the new Druid-E bike. This is also going to be my first time riding an e-bike, so super excited to get out there, check these bikes out, and chat with one of their lead engineers, Ollie Blight. So let's get into it. Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers to that.
We are here in beautiful Cumberland, British Columbia at the brewery. We are talking the new Forbidden e-bikes. We were up here about 2 years ago talking about the V2 Druid.
Yeah.
We are back, of course, with another new product. You are part of the design team behind this bike, you and the owner, Owen.
Yeah.
Super exciting bike. A lot of people are really excited about it. Maybe run us through, like, how did the design process start? Like, how long ago did you start working on this project?
Started over a year ago now. And we always kind of saw the e-bike market growing, and we kind of knew that we were going to have to get into it at some point. But we'd kind of been like on the sidelines watching what was good, what worked well, and like having plenty of time to ride lots of e-bikes as well, which I think has put us in good stead to like give our first crack at designing an e-bike and doing it well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that started a year ago, and just from riding e-bikes, we knew that this was going to be not a case of throwing a motor at the Druid and then just calling it a day. Like you can we started from the ground up, and yeah, culminated in this basically. But yeah, some key features that customers will probably notice is now we have a vertically positioned shock. So there's no horizontal shock with a shock tunnel. And the reason for that is that we wanted to package the motor and the battery like cleanly and efficiently, and still have lots of seat post insertion, because we know the importance of long dropper posts. So yeah, that was like a key driving factor behind this change. Like it's still 4-bar, it's still high pivot, it still does all the same things you love and know from a Druid V2, just with a slightly different look. So yeah, that's like one side of the design ethos. Then the other one is what happens to bike design and geometry once you have motor assistance.
Yeah, the motor's a big one. Obviously, you guys are going with the DJI motor, one of the first brands out there putting one of these bikes out. It's really exciting. I think a lot of people are fired up about that motor.
Yeah.
How did you guys get to choosing that motor? And like, did you do any like test mules? Because obviously there isn't a standardized mounting platform for motors, so you can't just like test a bunch on a mule.
No, it was a case of, we knew about the motor early on in 2024. We knew it was going to come out, and we saw pictures of it and its existence. So it kind of caught our eye then. But then it was we hadn't ridden it, we hadn't tested it. So then once we got an Amflow to test ride for a couple weeks, like that's when it was a no-brainer for us, because everything else we had tested previously, it just blew it out the water. So yeah, once we'd done that, it was a case of like getting the molds cut, getting a frame size for Owen as soon as possible that we could then throw a battery and motor in, and then yeah.
So you're not doing like any alloy test mules, like it's just, it was carbon?
Well, I think Forbidden as a company is fortunate to have Owen that's done bike design for 15 years or whatever. So when he's got his gut feelings about geometry and kinematics, it's like we trust that process. We're like, well, yeah, we're going to commit to carbon pretty early. And also from all the test riding we had done, we knew we were at a good place with the geometry. So yeah, we go straight to carbon. Yeah, we don't quite have the budgets that you see some of the big brands go with, but I think what we have is like knowledge and depth of knowledge.
Yeah, I think, I mean, visiting your new location, the new headquarters, it's a sweet spot. I think you guys have fewer employees than we do at Fanatik, which is like insane. We're a big bike shop, no doubt, but like you guys are operating and building some really awesome stuff with so few people. So 2 years ago when we were here at Forbidden visiting about the Druid V2, they were in an office in downtown Cumberland, and they recently moved to one a little further out of town, but it's actually super close to the Forbidden Plateau where we rode this bike, and they can just rip out of the office straight over there on these e-bikes. It really makes sense why they designed the bikes the way they did. There's a lot of that square edge hit kind of riding, and I've always found with that high pivot suspension that they do, it rides really well when you get in those square edge techie sections, and riding this bike on the Forbidden Plateau made total sense. So definitely awesome to see their offices are right where they ride.
We can see both of our riding zones from our office, which is quite nice. We have Cumberland just there, and then we have the Forbidden Plateau just over there. And then Comox Glacier right in the middle. It's not bad for some office views.
All right, so geometry on these bikes. I wanted to touch on that because I obviously love the geo of your analog bikes. And before we came up here, Matt sent me the geo chart for the S3 size I was gonna be riding. And it was like this 467 reach. And I'm a caveman. I look at a geo chart and I'm like, reach, that's what I'm looking for. But with these bikes, it's kind of a different story. You wanna talk us through kind of that geometry on the bike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so like we said, starting from the ground up with an e-bike, we knew that you have that motor assistance. It's going to be a more downhill orientated geometry anyway, because you're not so bothered about that climbing position that you are on a conventional bike. You've also got shorter cranks. So you want that high front end to be DH orientated, and then the short cranks lift the rider up in their stance. So everything kind of needs to be taller to compensate for that. So we've increased stack because of that, but it's not just a case of increasing stack and keeping reach at like 475 like it would be on an S3 Druid V2. You've got to bring the reach back because you're trying to maintain the span from the BB to the top of the head tube to be consistent. So we're not just going vertically up because that's how you measure stack. We're kind of coming back in an arc around the cranks. So that's why you'll see the taller stack giving you a shorter reach as well. But I'm interested to hear how did it feel for you from like seeing the numbers on paper? How did it translate then to on trail?
Yeah, seeing it on paper, I was terrified, and then hopped on the bike and like I was right at home, you know? I didn't feel like it was too short. I honestly didn't even feel like I was too high. I have been riding like a higher rise handlebar lately, but I mean, I felt right at home. And like you said, when you're going downhill, like it's just, you're kind of standing up a little bit more.
Yeah.
You're not quite as leaned over, and that's exactly where you want to be. You're kind of centered in that bike. And
yeah, and with more high-rise bars seeming to come up, you can raise that handle position without bringing it back too far, like you would if you just put in more and more stem spaces under there. Yeah, I think what it translates to on the trail is something that you feel like you're riding a mini downhill bike. That was the first thing I thought of as soon as I rode it. It's like, wow, this is so comfortable on the descents. So yeah, I'm glad it like
felt
does
natural.
Translate.
Yeah. I think
some of these things are hard, you know, it's like we do long chain stays.
Yeah, people trip out about that. Like I have friends that look at these bikes and they're like, you can't ride that. Like that rear end is way too long. So what's kind of the
But then you
behind
see
that?
the industry now is slowly catching up with longer chain stays on bigger sizes. So it's one of those things of you've got to make the change and like trust the process of that change. Well, not the change, I guess, like the progress that you're making and the direction you're going. And I think people will ride it and then will understand it a bit more.
So I am standing here with two bikes from Forbidden. We've got the Druid Core and the Druid LitE. And both of these bikes share the same carbon frame and the DJI Avinox Motor, which has 850 watts of peak power and 105 Newton meters of torque output. But besides that, these two bikes are different beasts for different people. So we do have two models. We've got the Core and the LitE.
Yep.
They use the same frame,
Yeah.
but there's some differences in shorter fork, shorter shock.
Yeah.
What's the geo difference maybe between those two?
So yeah,
with
you've
those shorter
got
things?
the Core comes with a ZEB and a Vivid at 160, 150, and then the LitE has a 150 Lyric and a 140 Super Deluxe. And yeah, like I said, identical frame, just a different stroke shock and the shorter fork. Also, you'll have 600 watt-hour battery, the smaller battery in the LitE, and then the 800 in the core. But yeah, what that does to the geometry is, for the LitE, you've got a 0.6 of a degree steeper head angle and seat tube angle as well. That also stretches the reach out as well to 474, I believe, on the LitE for an S3. So yeah, you got like 5 to 6 mil growth in the reach, which suits that style of riding where it is maybe a bit more pedal oriented, even though it is still an e-bike. But those changes give meaningful change to the geometry that suit that riding style a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, this was my first experience on an e-bike, so you guys kind of popped that bubble for me. You may have ruined me because like if I go ride any other e-bike, comparing it to this DJI motor might be pretty hard. I had a blast on the bikes. They were super fun. So our first day here in Cumberland, I actually rode this Druid Core, which is the longer travel, bigger battery bike, and had a blast. We rode in a zone called the Forbidden Plateau, and a lot of the trails we were riding were super chunky, fast, flowy stuff, and this Core was an awesome bike for that experience. It stayed really planted with that extra weight and really wanted you to charge. I'd say it kind of felt like my Dreadnought that I have at home. It's a bike that rewards you the chunkier things get and the harder you push it. It is a 50-pound bike, so it's not gonna pop around as easily as a lighter weight pedal bike, but you can definitely still get this thing up off of the ground. It's great. That DJI motor is kind of insane. We were ripping up a bunch of fire roads, and for the most part, I was running in auto mode that they have that kind of chooses the level of torque and output that this motor's doing. But occasionally we get on a real steep, loose grade, and I'd put this thing in the trail mode and it would just rip up that with ease. I didn't even really have to put it in boost mode very often. Did it a couple times to try it out, but trail mode is plenty on these bikes. They're just so powerful. We rode about like 3,800 worth of vert, maybe 20 miles. And at the end of the day, I still had about 30 to 25% of my battery life left on this with that big 800 watt-hour battery. So you could definitely push this thing for quite a bit of riding, and it's super impressive. That was an awesome bike. Had a great time. I can't say enough good things about my first e-bike experience aboard the Druid Core. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of friends taking screenshots of me saying I had fun on an e-bike, but there you have it. I had a lot of fun on an e-bike. So day 2 here in Cumberland, we got to ride the Druid LitE, and we rode that in the Cumberland Forest, which is just outside of downtown Cumberland. Great trail network, kind of similar to what we have back home in Bellingham. And when I was getting on this bike, it's the same frame, it's the same motor, just a lighter battery, little less travel, lighter suspension. I thought it's gonna ride almost exactly the same as the Druid Core, but this Druid LitE is a completely different bike. Where am I going? Woo! Definitely feel like this LitE is maybe a little more peppy and poppy than that Core with the lighter weight battery, Super Deluxe, Lyric. Just a little bit more lively, which is honestly really fun. Feels a bit more like my Druid, whereas that Core is probably a little closer to a smashing bike like my Dreadnought with that longer stroke shock and fork. But yeah, this bike's more playful. 140 millimeters of travel, some people trip out about that. But again, when you get on these high pivot bikes from Forbidden, they ride like so much more. And I was super impressed with the 140, 150 setup on this bike. Felt super easy to move the bike around. That weight at about 46 pounds, felt right at home on it. I would definitely say this bike is gonna be for that person that's probably gonna ride in eco mode more. Maybe they're trying to put out a little bit more personal effort on the bike. Because you've got that smaller battery, you're not gonna necessarily be able to go as far and have the range as this guy because of the big battery. But if you're running it in eco mode, you could be out there all day. Again, I rode this thing in the auto setting that they have kind of perfected with DJI, and it did everything I wanted. A couple times throw it in trail mode or boost mode just to have some fun ripping up a climb. Definitely felt with like techier climbing, I could maybe move this bike around a little easier. So this is definitely for the person who wants to climb a bit more. Maybe not on just a service road, but they want to do like technical single track. This is the bike. Smaller battery, so that's a thing that might turn some people off, but I think this bike is super fun, nimble, and it is a completely different ride experience from the Core. And I was super impressed by this one. I do tend to ride my Druid at home on pretty much everything, and I could see this LitE being that same kind of bike, you know. A lot of people might be turned off by the smaller battery, shorter travel, but don't be. This thing is a rocket ship and super fun to ride. So it's not just about motors and torque and battery sizes. DJI has also put a lot of work into the displays on these bikes and what you can kind of do on them. There's a whole bunch of connectivity that you can do, which is super impressive. So the software update that will be on these bikes when they start landing at the shop has this cool little feature where if you're running Exo Eagle, it has what's called smooth shift. So it's not a auto shift that requires you to pedal, but when you shift and you aren't pedaling, the motor will kind of do its thing and shift the rear end for you. So say you were coming down a hill and you knew there was a big uphill, you could just hit the shifter, get you in the gear you want to be in, and that rear end's just going to shift into it without you pedaling, which is pretty sick. Super impressive system that they've got there. They've also got a lot of connectivity with other Bluetooth devices, especially DJI devices. Influencers can rejoice if you have a DJI action cam with the DJI app on the bike. You can actually pair all sorts of different accessories, and one of those accessories is the camera. And then I can just control turning it on and off right here. So all you YouTube vloggers, get yourself an action cam when you get the bike and make some content. There's 4 different buttons that you have for the controls of the motor, and you can program it to do whatever you want. There's also a super intuitive app, which a lot of other brands are doing, where you can go in and just tune each mode to have all sorts of different settings that you would want. It's super impressive. I think a lot of brands are having to do that with their apps, but the DJI one was super easy to use and simple. Like I said, there is an auto mode that the team at Forbidden has kind of built out, and I rode most of the weekend in that mode, and it did amazing. I didn't really often have to go into these other modes, but you can tune them to do whatever you want. So maybe you want to get a little bit more range out of one of these bikes, like the 600 watt-hour battery, you want to get some more range. You can tune that power in each mode to like conserve power. So super intuitive, easy. It's a touch screen on that display, which nobody else is doing. Super impressive stuff that DJI is doing. I think they really thought about everything with the app and the motor and the batteries before releasing it, and I think it's gonna be a game changer for sure. All right, so amazing first e-bike experience, had a lot of fun. Just wanna say thanks to the team at Forbidden for getting me kitted out on the Core and the LitE this week. It will be interesting to go home and hop on some of those other brands with different motors and see how they kind of stack up to these Forbiddens with that DJI system. Super excited to do that and kind of get a more well-rounded thought on different e-bikes. So if you have any questions about the Forbidden e-bikes specifically, reach out to us at fanatikbike.com or leave some questions in the comments and we will get back to you. That is all we've got from sunny Cumberland, British Columbia, and we will see you next time.